everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of the UK Glamping Podcast, hosted by Glampitect. Over the coming weeks, we're going to be talking you through every step involved in setting up your own glamping site, as well as having a chat to various guests week in, week out, who have both done it themselves or in some other way involved in the industry, be that through pod manufacturing, ground screws, or any aspect that might be involved in getting yourself set up. I'm pleased to say that this week we have with us a very special guest, Nick Purslow, Managing Director of Glampitect North America. Welcome along, Nick.
Pleasure to be on, Ali. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for taking the chance of being the first guest and being our guinea pig on the pod. If you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your own background.
Yeah. So thanks, Ali. Obviously, as I say, my name is Nick. I'm the Managing Director of Glampitect North America, which is Glampitect's branch in the US and Canada. I joined Glampitect's UK business back in 2020. I'm sure we'll go into that a little bit, and kind of rose up the ranks, I suppose, and then we launched the North American branch in 2022. I also host the kind of North American version of this podcast, which actually started with a focus on the UK. So hopefully there are some listeners to that podcast tuning in today. We started to kind of interview UK operators, and then now we've moved over to interviewing operators in the US and Canada, as well as financing people as well. And we are now also in the process of developing a first resort of our own up here in Canada as well.
Wow, amazing. So you were probably arguably one of the first pairs of boots on the ground with Glampitect in the UK back in 2020 there. And you've now made the move across the water, so a big step for you.
Yeah, well, I think I was maybe employee number 8 or 9 or something. I was only ever part time because I was at university, and I kind of took it on part time, and then I graduated, as I say, in summer of 2022, and then it all started actually at the UK Glamping show when. We had a pretty good show and we had a few beers, and I convinced Callum to let me crack America for him. So I think it was 18 months later, I just graduated and we launched the US business.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's nothing like a few beers to convince yourself something's a good idea. So how did you kind of first get involved with the glamping industry? Was it something you'd done yourself in your own spare time, or was it Glampitect your first interaction with it?
No, so I was studying law at the Uni of Manchester, and I realised pretty quickly that I didn't want a career in law, so I needed to do something else pretty sharpish. So I knew a guy locally from my home, kind of near my hometown, who just made these kind of wooden structures for consumers, but also for businesses. He also got into the glamping pod frame manufacturing business. So he had a CNC machine, and he'd create the curves for the glamping pods, sell the frame to the likes of Loon Valley. Actually, I probably shouldn't mention other manufacturers on here now.
No, that's all right. There's no swear words here. It's fine.
He would sell the frames to glamping pod manufacturers, and that was kind of I basically offered to do some marketing for him. And so in the process of doing that, I interviewed Callum. I was going to write a blog for the business that I was doing a bit of marketing work for, and he basically offered me a job on our first call. So I joined Glampitect and just started doing kind of content writing, blog writing, and basically the stuff that at the time Callum, Glampitect's founder, basically wanted to hand off to someone else.
Okay, great. That for your reference, everyone listening, Callum is Callum McLeod. He is the CEO and co-founder of Glampitect. And if you tune into the second episode, you'll get to meet him in person. We'll pick his brains in a little bit more detail. So you, much like myself then, Nick, you probably came into the industry with kind of zero experience of it, certainly from a corporate perspective. What was it that kind of got you excited and has kept you working in this industry over the years?
Well, I think, a lot of people, if they're asked this kind of question, will say, the hospitality aspect or anything like that. But just to be honest, I was amazed by the ROI that's achievable in the industry, kind of particularly compared to, in traditional, not traditional real estate, but in the short-term rental aspect of real estate, where people are buying homes and putting them on Airbnb. a good return, your return on capital might take 8 to 12 years, and that would be seen as a reasonable return. Glamping is generally a lot less than that, and that's because of the high daily rates, the minimal kind of initial capital expenditure, etc. So that really kind of excited me and kind of made me realise there's potential in this industry, and that's what was ultimately led to being in the process of starting my own first resort over here as well. And then as you learn about the industry and you take part in it more, and as I say, I have the kind of North American podcast and speaking to a lot of operators over here who, a lot of them have similar stories of they've always had one or two guests who have come up to them and said, this glamping stay saved my marriage or massively improved my relationship with my family or my child or whatever, and as you go on, that definitely becomes more of a common theme, and that's also kind of the emotional pull, I suppose, and I'm looking forward to hopefully having that experience myself once we open our doors. But yeah, initially what grabbed me was the financial potential of the industry, definitely.
No, yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed you do get some similar experiences. So with 2020, you probably entered the industry right at the time where it started booming the most in the UK, with obviously the COVID-19 outbreak and lockdown having kind of shut all the traditional holidays and options down for people. That's when I think most people first became aware of glamping and first started to kind of dip their toe in it as a potential option with the rise of staycations. Would you say you've seen that kind of pattern go over the years?
Yeah. So I joined in November 2020, so it'd been kind of 7-8 months into the pandemic, and I think it had been that summer in 2020 where it really started to go. So I kind of caught it, just kind of as it had taken off that summer, really. And there was a lot of questions at the time. Is it going to be a fad? Is the demand still going to be there after COVID, etc.? And it hasn't got away. I think we've just seen a glamping site on Dragon's Den the other week.
Yes, indeed. Actually, clients of ours.
So yeah, I mean it's certainly not gone away over here as well. I think in North America it took a little bit longer to catch on. It didn't start quite as quickly as the UK, but it's very much going in an upward trend as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen a real kind of compound growth rate of the market over the last few years, and certainly all the current projections are that that's not going to change anytime soon. But speaking of the US, obviously vastly different market to the UK. Tell us a little bit about what kind of drove you over there and what you found the major differences to be compared to the UK.
Yeah, so I think kind of by the time Callum and I had those beers after the show and decided that we'd do it. I think he had launched or was in the process of launching the kind of Middle Eastern component of what he was doing. And so as you do that, the natural conversation is where next, and America is always kind of is the obvious choice, really. And yeah, it just seemed natural. I was graduating in the not too distant future, so I'd be freed up to do a full-time role. We'd started looking at the North American industry, and it looked pretty exciting. We knew next to nothing about it at the time. Obviously, I know a lot more about it now, and those kind of initial kind of predictions have come true. And yeah, it just seemed the natural step, and it was very it wasn't like a long drawn out decision. It was just, as I say, a few beers, and you're like, yeah, let's do it. And then the next week it's okay. Well, next task is actually start researching the market, figure out confirm whether there is a market for us, etc. And yeah, it kind of went from there.
Okay, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with confirming whether or not the market is there for you is probably the number one concern that we hear from our clients most often at Glampitect when they first get in touch with us is there a market for this, and more importantly, is the piece of land that I've got in mind going to work? And now you touched earlier on the fact that you're in the process of setting your own site up, so fingers crossed that goes smoothly for you. But what would you say are the kind of key factors to look for, or perhaps key factors to avoid when you're looking for a piece of land? Do you think that's fairly universal between the UK and the US, or are there significant differences in the challenges you face?
There are definitely differences, but there are similarities as well. So I'll just say, the US, obviously we're doing this in Canada. The systems are pretty similar, but yeah, in the US you have something called a zoning system, which obviously isn't present in the UK, and the zoning system is basically every county in the US, sometimes it's a city or a township, but we'll just say every county in the US has its own zoning code, and what that is the code will divide the land within that county into various zoning districts. So you might have an agricultural district, a residential district, and then you'll have kind of 3 or 4 sub-residential districts and maybe 1 or 2 sub-agricultural districts. So it gets pretty complicated. Simple, yeah. And then there'll be a list of uses that are permitted either by right, which means you still have to submit an application, but there's no kind of like public hearing process. Then there'll be some uses that are allowed kind of subject to a conditional use permit, which is where you sometimes have to go through a public hearing process, and that's a longer process. And basically every zoning district has a list of uses that are allowed, as I say, permitted, but by right, by conditional use, or just not allowed at all. And the major difference being in practice is that it's a lot more of a rigid system. In the UK, there are obviously policy guidelines, policy rules, but it's not this kind of district cannot be used for anything outside of these 8 uses, for example.
More shades of grey, really, than in the UK, then.
Yeah, basically, and the shades of grey do come in the US, but there's just that first level of zoning that quite often just is a yes or no answer for whether it's even a possibility. Or certainly sometimes there's 100% no answer, and then there may be a kind of shade of grey in whether it's a yes or not. So yeah, that's a big difference. But in some cases, to be honest, it makes that first stage of research a little bit easier, because you can sometimes just straight away rule out something, whereas in the UK you kind of maybe have to look at some old planning decisions. You have to kind of interpret the broad policy guidelines, and that can be a little bit more tricky.
Absolutely, yeah. And that is something that we here at Glampitect are here to help our listeners and our clients with, via what is known as a feasibility assessment. We will cover that in a later episode, so we'll go into that in a little bit more detail there. But we can absolutely help if you're not sure whether or not your land's going to work, or whether a piece of land you're considering purchasing might be suitable. So absolutely get in touch. I'll put my contact details all on the bottom here, so give us a shout if you've got any questions at all. So I just want to... Yeah, you can't miss out. Speaking of which, here's your opportunity. Where you mentioned that you're starting your own sites up, where can people find out a bit more about that and find out more about what you're doing on that side of the water?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll tell the story really of how it came to be. So we kind of back in October. Actually, I timed it stupidly and unintentionally. I typed in an email to go out to our mailing list, basically on the morning of the Glamping Show USA in Denver, Colorado. And basically that email said, look, we're looking to develop our own resorts. If you're interested in investing in these projects, then just fill out this form with your preferred investment amount. And I think we had about kind of maybe 1,400 people on the North American mailing list at the time, and this was back in October. And we've since kind of, in terms of investor interest, which obviously doesn't translate to actual investment, but in terms of investor interest, we've kind of exceeded $10 million worth of interest from those emails. So
huge.
That's obviously, we're really happy with that. And so that kind of gave us the confidence to really kick on and say, okay, we're going to be going and doing this. So since then, we've been looking at land, kind of gone back and forth between a few different locations, but we've settled on an area in the Rocky Mountains of Canada.
Absolutely stunning part of the world, yeah. Yeah,
it's beautiful, and the area that we're looking at actually has no zoning, and so basically you're allowed to do whatever you want, which obviously is a big
happy days. Yeah.
So we've got a property kind of in our sights at the minute. We're just finishing off the business plan and finishing off our numbers, and we're hoping to go to investors in literally as we record in the next week or two, which is pretty exciting. So the one plug I would ask, and Ollie, I'm going to make sure the link to the investor form is in the description of this episode. There'll be a link in the description of this episode if you're interested in investing in this project. It is in Canada, but we are working with tax experts to make sure that people can invest from the UK and the US. If you are interested in hearing more about that project and being part of that we're probably going to do some webinars or just one-to-one pitches. If you are interested in that, then just fill out that form. No commitment needed. It just puts you on the list of people that we're keeping updated.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll make sure we get that in the episode description for you. Get in touch, people. Get in while the going's good. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of which, and investment for the future, let's talk briefly about how you see the kind of future of the industry. I think, certainly from the UK side of things, the early adopters seem to get in at fairly basic level. And it was kind of either units in their garden or little bits here and there. And it was done at a relatively entry level without the kind of finer touches and the luxurious side of things. And certainly I've seen a pattern across the industry where more and more touches of luxury are being expected by people going away now, and the Instagram generation with their photos in the hot tubs and the bubbly. But what do you see the future of the industry looking like over the next few years?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think back when I started, it was a case of almost building they will come and you just put a few pods. And to be fair, glamping pods themselves, as long as you go to the right manufacturers, are pretty nice, well finished units. It's not like, for example, there are obviously bell tents in the UK. There's a lot more bell tents over in the US, probably because the climate can be better in a lot of places.
It's not super friendly with the rain over here.
Yeah, and bell tents, can be great, but they can also be a little bit kind of cheap and not so great. Whereas glamping pods have always been, with the right manufacturers, pretty nice. So there's always been that kind of base level. They've generally had ensuite bathrooms, so that base level has always been decent. But yeah, generally it's been a case of kind of put 4 or 5 pods in the field. That's really how Callum actually started with NC500 pods as well. Obviously they're nice pods, a nice location, but there's nothing kind of revolutionary, particularly compared to Avant Glamp that's coming up. I don't know whether the listeners are. I'm sure you can tell them a bit about that, Ollie, in upcoming episodes. But yeah, basically, I think the standards are definitely going up. The expectations are definitely going up. I actually sent Callum a message when I saw a clip of the Dragon's Den episode, just because I said, that's some of some innovation that's kind of been lacking in the UK industry
absolutely. They were very much the kind of forefront of the kind of luxury touches now, with things like cinema screens and little kind of cozy nooks and retreat areas. So I think there's still a market absolutely for that lower end. Like myself personally, I'd still be more than happy to take my tent and wander off into the Scottish Highlands and pitch a tent, but I know if I was trying to take my parents along for a weekend away, there's not a chance that my mother would go anywhere near it without an ensuite and a proper shower and a flushing toilet. So I think it's a case of you play to your market, really. But when it comes to glamping, the more comfort you can add, the more people you're potentially going to attract. Yeah,
absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, I'm conscious I don't want to take up too much of your time, Nick. You're clearly a busy man with a business plan to do for your current project. So before I let you go, I guess I'd just ask, what would you say is the one kind of best piece of advice you've received when thinking about setting your own site up, or what's the one piece of advice you would give to people who are considering getting into this industry? Yeah,
I think I'll go with the second one because it's something that I'm going through the process now of starting my own site, and I've been in the industry for a number of years, and I've spoken to a whole load of successful operators, and you do get advice and wisdom from them, but until you actually go through the process yourself, you don't quite realise what exactly it's like, and that's where you really kind of learn what it's all about. And so the one thing I would say to anyone looking to do something like this is just don't expect it to be easy. There will absolutely be obstacles, there'll be challenges that do come up, particularly if you're trying to raise money from investors or banks or whatever. So just don't go into it expecting to have absolutely everything go your way. You'll probably have to make some compromises. You'll have to you'll realise that maybe things are more expensive than you might think, and things like that. So just don't go into it expecting it to be easy. And when the obstacles do come your way, just don't lose your head too much, and make sure you navigate them, and you'll find your way through eventually.
Fantastic. Well, fingers crossed it's not too stressful for you and you don't find yourself with a hairline like mine next time you've got you on the podcast.
It would have to be very stressful for that to happen.
It certainly would. I think, absolutely, it's a fantastic piece of advice, and I would echo that and say, look, just pick the phone up, send people a WhatsApp, send us an email. There are people there to help, no matter how minor or major the problem you're hitting might seem to be. Come and speak to us here at Glampitect and we will do our utmost to kind of guide you through that. So I will let you go. Thank you very much for being with us today, Nick. As I say, all the contact details are below, and please do see the description of the episode here for a link to Nick's details if you would like to follow up with him directly.
Thanks, Ollie. An absolute pleasure.
Thanks very much, Nick. Take care.